Hello students, I will explain to you the Task-2 must reading materials of animation techniques. In the top you will find the logical step of creating animation, which are three steps, starting with planning, which is called gather up in your mind all the activities you wish to provide in the animation, means the plan. Then based on your plan, you need to choose the animation tool that is a suite to your planning, and then after that you need to tweak your sequences. The last step is to post-process by adding some effects, adding some sounds into the animation that you have created. So here for the logical steps we have three steps we must follow to create any animation. Now regarding the spaces, we need to decide to which space that we want to create animation. Is it 2-dimension? Is it 2-dimension and half? Means 2-dimension and half means to add some effects like shadow or some other effects into the 2-dimension animation. Because of that, it's called 2.5-dimension space, or which is the most realistic animation is called a 3D animation. Then after that you will find is just explanation about the traditional, the first animation, which is called the cell animation, that it has been invented by Earl Howard in 1915, and the name of animation is called cell animation because of the sheets used at that time to paint and draw the scenes of the animation. Which is derived from the clear celluloid sheets that, of course, as you can find here, were used for drawing each frame. Now, the concept of the traditional animation or the first animation is again its concept depends on the keyframes and the frame, and the process to create the animation is called tweening. So the animation must start with keyframe and end it with keyframe. So because of that we can find the first and the last frame of an action. So any action must start with a keyframe and end it with keyframe. In between we call it a frame, and the process to calculate the number of frames between the keyframe and the path of the action takes is called this process tweening. So this is the concept behind the animation at that time. Until now, with computer animation, we are using the same concept. So in 1990, Disney stopped using this traditional animation cells when they started or replaced actually the cell animation with computer animation production system. So everything replaced by using the computer animation. Now, what's the difference between computer animation and traditional animation? So here we can find the primary difference is how much time must be drawn by the animator. Now at that time everything must be painted, drawn by the animator using hand drawing, but here now with the computer, of course, it will save the time, it will save the effort, and some frames will be generated automatically. So we can find the difference is how much must be drawn by the animator and how much is automatically generated by the software. So here, of course, the time, the quality, the number of frames will be generated to create the animation is, of course, is faster and will take short time compared with the traditional animation. So the traditional animation and computer animation is depending on frames and keyframes, and we say there is a process to generate the frames between the keyframes is called tweening. Now the frames always will be used to organize and control the content of your animation document, for example, for how long time your animation. So it depends how many frames you will put and how many frames will be, of course, use it to control the speed of the animation. So again, here the frames are used to organize and control the content of your document. Now the keyframes we said is the first and the last frames of your action, and where a new a simple instance will appear in the time line. So when I start adding objects into the stage, like image, like video, or any other objects, then the keyframe will be started to be generated. So in addition to the frame and keyframe that will be used to define the animation, we need to decide what animation technique will be used to create the animation. Depends on the idea, the plan of your animation. As we can find here in this section number 5, the different animation techniques can be used, especially with Adobe Animate. So we have frame by frame animation, we have motion twins, classic twins, shape twins. So all of these are techniques can be used to create animation. Now regarding the frame by frame animation, this technique is, will be created to of course define the location of the object in every frame. This is the simple definition for the frame by frame animation. Define the location of the object on the stage in every frame. Because of that, we call it the frame by frame animation. Now why this? Of course, to create this illusion of movement by making an incremental change between every key frame. Now this technique, it has a disadvantage. As we can find here, the disadvantage is increase your file size. Why? Because Adobe Animate must store the content for each keyframe, because we said for each keyframe we have to change the location, we have to change the properties to create animation using this technique. Now the other animation technique we have it here is called motion twins. Of course, this one will save your time, compare it with frame by frame animation, and this is a new technique in Adobe Animate. So instead of defining the location of the object in every frame, you can create motion tween. Now regarding the motion tween, this technique is created by specifying different values for an object property between the first and the last frame. So only you need to let us say you specify the properties of the first and last keyframe, then the frames between the keyframes will be generated automatically by using the computer. Now this technique requires you to use some simple instance to create this animation. Now the classic tween, which is the older way of creating animation in anime. So the newest is motion, the older is called the classic tween. Is also depends on symbol instance, also will be used to change the position, rotation, scale, transformation, color effects, and even filter. So the same thing as the motion tween, but this technique is more complicated to create and less flexible compared with the motion tween. Here you will find a comparison between motion tween and the classic tween, so please check it out. The last type of technique can be used with Adobe Animate is called shape tweening. This is a technique for interpolating the stroke and fill of the shape. Now always the shape that we draw on the stage, it has two properties. One is called fill, one is called stroke. So this shape tweening is targeting these two objects to change its properties, and then what we create what's called morphing from one shape to another. For example, I have rectangle, then will be morph or transform it into a triangle. So here in this case I use, so if I want to change shape to another shape, in this case we use shape tweening. So because shape tweening applies only to shapes, so you cannot use it with the groups, you cannot use it with symbol instances or bitmap image. So we have to consider that with shape tweening. Now here we can find how we can recognize these type of animation techniques in Adobe Animate. So here the first one is just normal frames on the timeline. This one, the purple color, this is for classic tween. The green is for shape tweening, and the last one, the blue, is for motion tween. So when I find these colors, I can recognize which technique is there. This is everything about the animation techniques. I will stop here with the animation technique, then I will record another video to you to explain to you the storyboarding to start planning about creating the animation. Thank you so much and all the best.